The younger daughter noticed that there were 5 red threads on top of her father's head-on connected to her mother and another to her aunt. In her innocence, she drew these out. The mother, who had long been suspicious, went completely mad after seeing her daughter's drawing. She assaulted and killed her husband, then disappeared without a trace. As she grew older, she gradually came to understand the true meaning of these threads. These web threads connect everyone who has ever had a physical relationship. Some are linked to just one person, while others are connected to half the city. Only she, Shen Shexi, can see these harmful secrets, but she also realizes that this ability could bring deadly danger. Gripped by fear, she chooses to close her eyes, refusing to look or speak about it, giving up everything, even attempting suicide. However, it seems that fate is toying with her. Every attempt to end her own life ends in failure, until one day, she makes up her mind. If she can't die, then she must uncover the origin of these threads, find out who's behind them, and whether anyone else possesses these cursed eyes. She is determined to find a way to eliminate all of this, even if the journey is destined to be full of uncertainty and danger. At that moment, there was a knock at the door. A person claiming to be a newly moved-in neighbor had come to visit, bringing fruit as a gift. She hid inside the house without making a sound. The neighbor gently reminded her to eat the fruit before it spoiled, then left. Meanwhile, the police received a report. A 29-year-old female cafe worker had been strangled to death in her home. Detective Han Ju from the Arc Police Department conducted an investigation at the scene. The deceased was a 29-year-old woman who lived alone in this apartment building and had worked as the manager of a nearby cafe. Her parents lived in the countryside, she had no siblings, and she broke up with her boyfriend a year ago. Although the room appeared messy, the items were arranged extremely neatly, and the body had been handled with unusual cleanliness, almost as if it were a carefully staged scene, exuding a bizarre sense of ritual. During the police investigation, it was discovered that the previous night, a man wearing a helmet had appeared in the apartment hallway, seemingly a food delivery worker. However, what was strange was that the victim had not ordered any food that night. Even more bizarre, none of the valuables in the room were missing, and there were no signs of sexual assault on the body. The answer to the riddle: the investigators speculated that the suspect was not motivated by money or desire, but rather by more complex psychological reasons. Meanwhile, the news reported on this murder case. The reporter mentioned in the news that this was the 3rd case in a short period where a woman living alone had been killed in the Xingwudong community. The police made no progress in the case. The investigation reached a stalemate, and the residents, shaken by the string of murders, were gripped by panic, with unease and suspicion spreading through every street and alley. In this oppressive atmosphere, she keenly sensed the threat drawing closer. As a young woman living alone, she fit the profile of the victims perfectly. However, what she didn't know was that she was about to come face to face with a shocking truth hidden behind this case. At that moment, her attention was firmly captured by a detail in the news footage. The man wearing the helmet had only a single red line extending from the top of his head, although it is extremely rare for someone to have hundreds of S-lines. Having just one slender and distinct S-line does not mean a person is unremarkable. Sometimes it actually warrants even more caution. At that moment, the sudden roar of a motorcycle engine came from downstairs, drawing her attention in that direction. To her shock, she saw that the helmeted man with only one S-line from the news was slowly walking into the apartment building across the street. Her heart suddenly tightened. A sharp instinct told her that he was the serial killer. She quickly grabbed her phone, wanting to call the police, only to find that it was dead from not being used for so long. In a panic, she immediately plugged her phone into the charger. Her eyes fixed intently on the window. The man's figure disappeared into the stairwell. Right after that, she saw the man enter the apartment of the newly moved-in neighbor. Her phone finally powered on, the screen lighting up, and with trembling hands she dialed the police. Before he could finish speaking, he froze. In the scene before his eyes, the man was actually embracing the woman of the house, his expression natural, as if they were familiar lovers. Soon, a second fireball appeared above the man's head. The red string connected him to the female neighbor. Early the next morning, Han Ziyu received a call from a colleague, who brought up the crucial report from the night before. The call mentioned the man wearing a helmet. What was even more unsettling was that the delivery man suspect had never been made public. This suggested that the person who reported it was very likely an eyewitness. But when the colleague revealed the location of the report building B, Xinhua apartment, Han Ziyu felt a jolt in his heart, because that was exactly where he lived. After hanging up the phone, he stood by the window, his gaze falling on the window across from him, which was sealed shut with cardboard. His mind was clouded with suspicion. With questions swirling in his head, he walked to the door mentioned in the report and knocked softly, his heart pounding like a drum behind the door. For the first time, he saw someone whose head was so densely wrapped with shaped lines up close. A neighbor passing by coldly reminded him not to laugh. This person was the neighborhood's well-known shut-in. Even the trash has to be taken out by someone else, yet you still haven't given up knocking on this door. At last, the door slowly opened, barely revealing half a face. He spoke in a low voice. "I called the police by mistake." Still frowning, he pressed for details about what happened at the time, and now, with a slight tremor in his voice, he explained. He saw a man wearing a helmet enter the apartment of the girl in 204 across the hall, and thought she might be in danger. So he called the police, but soon he realized the two of them were a couple, which also caught Han Jiu's attention. Ye Wen was awakened by the familiar sound of a motorcycle engine, only to find that this time, the man did not enter the apartment building across the street like he had the night before. Instead, he slowly entered the building where he was. Shanbai held his breath and quietly walked to the door, observing the hallway through the peephole. The man, still wearing his helmet, slowly walked past. Above his head, there was only a single red thread extending out. This was unusually obvious. Last night, the man who entered the neighbor's apartment was Han Jiu's partner, who had discovered his own sister-in-law. Both female victims in the number 5 murder case had connections with the same man. His name is Wu Zhennim, and he currently lives in apartment 303 building B, just a few steps away from the crime scene. What's even more coincidental is that one of the victims was still going to the same witness room with Wu Zhenmin until just a few weeks ago. Han Jiu saw the photo and recognized that the deceased was the male neighbor who had spoken to her that day. The overlapping movements in the two cases make all these seemingly coincidental connections take on an eerie quality. With doubts in mind, the two decided to investigate in person. Before they set out, Han Jiu received a phone call. News came from the nursing home where her father stayed. The elderly man claimed that the caregiver mysteriously disappeared when leaving. Han Jiu first went to the nursing home to look for her father, while her partner Udongji went alone to investigate apartment 303. Wudongji arrived at the door of apartment 303 and, seeing that the door was unlocked, walked right in. He saw that there were many ropes in a red room. Just as he was about to tell Han Jiu about this discovery, he was attacked by Wu Zhenmin. Sensing that something was wrong, Han Jiu hurried to apartment 303. After subduing Wudongji, Wu Zhenmin put his helmet back on and prepared to deal with his next target. Hearing the commotion, She saw the helmeted man heading toward the building across the street. She tried to call the police, but her phone was up a battery again. At this moment, Xiangxi was faced with the most important choice of her life: to remain silent and protect herself, or to step forward and save innocent lives. This time Xiangxi chose courage. She rushed out of her safe room, trying to prevent the impending tragedy. However, just as she stepped outside, her body suddenly gave out from fear and extreme tension. Her vision went black, and she collapsed helplessly to the ground. At that moment, the female neighbor heard the doorbell and opened the door, thinking it was her boyfriend. But when Wu Zhenmin took off his helmet, the female neighbor was stunned. With both hands tightly gripping the woman's neck, his eyes gleamed with a crazed light. The woman struggled desperately, but gradually lost her strength. But at that moment, Xiangxi stood at the doorway, clutching the knife tightly in her hand. Wu Zhenmin looked up at her and sneered. He pressed in closer with every step, his taunting tone like a sharp blade stabbing into her heart. Xiangxi was breathing heavily, her arm shaking so much she could barely hold onto the knife handle. Wu Zhenmin snatched the knife away, and with a swift motion, stabbed it into Xiangxi's abdomen. Xiangxi collapsed to the ground in agony, while Wu Zhenmin turned and charged at the woman on the left. At that critical moment, the woman grabbed the pillow and struck Wu Zhenmin in the eyes. Wu Zhenmin, stunned with his hand raised, immediately fell to the floor, frantically groping around on the ground with both hands. Taking advantage of the opportunity, the woman rushed to the doorway, knelt beside Xiangxi, and called his name hoarsely at the top of her lungs. Meanwhile, Han Jiu arrived downstairs. As soon as he got out of the car, he noticed a pair of sunglasses lying quietly on the ground. He recognized them as the ones Xiangxi wore, and his heart tightened. He immediately hurried upstairs. The front door of Xiangxi's house was ajar. Han Jiu pushed it open and walked in, but was stunned by the scene before him. The walls were densely covered with information recorded by Xiangxi. Suddenly, a sharp, piercing scream came from afar. He turned around abruptly and through the window saw a fierce fight taking place in a room in the building across the street. Han Jiu's eyes turned cold. He swiftly drew his sidearm, held it steady with both hands, and pulled the trigger. A burst of gunfire tore through the night sky. The bullet whistled loud, piercing the glass with precision and striking Wu Zhenmin's body. But Han Ziyu was about to return the sunglasses to Xiangxi, the sunglasses that Xiangxi had given him, when he remembered what Wu Zhenmin had said before he died. It seemed that Wu Zhenmin, like himself, could see the S-line. He recalled how Woo Jae-min had looked so pleased when searching for the glasses. Could it be that those glasses allowed him to see the red line? Han Chi-yu's niece, Sha-me, saw the message, and Lei-jin seemed to have known her for a long time. Sha-ne told her uncle about it. The three of them were classmates. Many years ago, his mother suffered a mental breakdown and, in a fit of madness, killed her husband before disappearing without a trace. Since then, the boy had loped out of school. In the stillness of the night, for the first time, a thought occurred to him. Perhaps the S-line he could see was not just a curse that appeared from time to time. It might also be the key to saving others. However, the phone screen suddenly lit up. A message from a suspicious number popped up. He stared resolutely at the screen, then took a deep breath. Standing up, he began to remove the cardboard pieces that had sealed his window one by one. In that moment, the evasiveness that used to be in his eyes was gone, replaced by an unprecedented determination. He was ready to meet the person who had sent in the message. The next day at school, the head waitress at the restaurant read aloud a love letter she had written to her crush, which infuriated Shanne, who immediately lunged at her. Fortunately, the teacher rushed in and managed to separate them. After school, Brother Sham discovered a pair of glasses in his locker. Those were Woo Jae-min's glasses. The serial murder case had just come to a close, but the real horror was only beginning. Han Chuni was now experiencing deep confusion. He could not understand Woo Jae-min's motive for killing. Woo Jae-min had murdered women who had blocked his way, who had some connection to him, which on the surface fit the characteristics of a revenge crime. But the actual choices were puzzling. Why not a year ago? And why now? Even stranger, this math teacher, who had never been religious, kept muttering words related to salvation. With these questions in mind, Fan Jio once again went to Woo Jae-min's residence. The walls were covered with dense red string diagrams, creating a chilling atmosphere. At the same time, she noticed a red thread above her head through her glasses. She wanted to touch it deeply, but found that the thread was like a phantom, impossible to reach. Now her uncle has returned. She saw countless red threads above his head. Suddenly, she screamed in terror, and everyone frantically ran out the door. The security guard happened to be passing by, and noticed that she looked panicked, her eyes fixed intently on the top of his head. In that moment, a trace of doubt arose in his heart. Could it be that this girl can also see the red threads?